It's so good to see you.
Good to see you too. You look lovely. Life must be agreeing with you.
Thank you. I'm trying to, I'm trying. It's been trying. That's the best way to put it.
Yeah, well, what I was hoping to hear is that your personal life is going well, but of course we're all dealing with this absolute 13th century madness, you know?
That's pretty accurate. Yeah. I have a fiance and a 6-year-old son, 6.5-year-old son, who's, you know, thanks to COVID, is finally getting to do some of his firsts. So tomorrow we've got a piano recital. It's his first ever. We took him to Disney World this past weekend. So, you know, things are good as far as that's concerned. We're happy.
Well, that's good. That's good.
I'm just trying to protect him from this Neanderthal government that's trying to take over our world.
Yeah, yeah. You know, many of us have been working for human rights for decades and decades and decades, and we thought we'd notch some pretty good, solid victories.
I can tell you, you did.
And you know, I don't think we even imagined, I know I didn't imagine that we could have marched back so far, so fast.
I think when you see the tragedy of the past administration and what was allowed to be done without being checked, it's honestly, it's the travesty of not having checks and balances in government and not having people who will stand to stand up for what's right, and and fight the right, fight for our rights.
One of the things, and I think you really targeted something important. You know, those of us who kind of grew up in the 60s and 70s, we had this idea that our government had been so well thought through that it was idiot proof, that it was venal proof, that it was scoundrel proof, and that has proved not to be the case at all.
Well, I mean, the Constitution, I mean, the framers talked about how there would be people who would try to do certain things. It's one of the reasons that the presidency is limited. It's one of the reasons that that there are theoretical checks and balances. The problem is when it's gone unchecked, and when the people who we hire to do the work vis-a-vis our representatives don't do their jobs, they need to be replaced, and can be replaced as those checks and balances, as part of the checks and balances. We just have to do the work of making sure that people understand that and know what they're doing. And I think, that the big challenge, I don't think that the framers took into consideration technology and how things would be so much more convenient to bastardize, as well as to proselytize. So there's a obvious checks that are wonderful. There's obvious wonderful things about the fact that we have the kind of technology that we do, and we can get information out to people so that when we need it, we can rally the proverbial troops. But on the other hand, it also gives people unfettered options for the First Amendment, and and running with falsities and untruths and lies. And frankly, lies.
Before we go too much further, I do want to introduce my charming guest, a woman who has been in the trenches for human rights for decades. I won't say how many, because that's irrelevant. You're just a marvelous, hard-charging, patriotic human rights advocate, Miss Meredith Ochman. A woman I've known for almost probably a decade or so, and have been just so honored to know, and so pleased and impressed by everything I've ever heard you say. And
thank you. Listen, it's been 25 years. I'm not shy about any of it. My birthday's today, and
happy birthday!
Thank you.
Oh, nice.
I can tell you that I have earned every second of it. There were at least several times where my health was faltering and I didn't think I was going to make it to the next day. So, I'm in great health. Everything's wonderful. And I've made it to 47. So I've earned every second of it. And I don't run away from the numbers, because it, frankly, I remember a time, I know it sounds older, but I remember a time when we didn't have to worry about some of these things because generations before us did all that work. And to see it falling is tragic at best. It's tragic. And
I have been an activist since my teenage years, and over all that time and all that advocacy, from anti-war things to human rights things, I never imagined that there would be so many people who would still buy into authoritarianism, who would still look for some magical leader who's going to wave the wand and keep the bad people away. I never imagined so much gullibility. I never, as a child of the 60s, who was raised with the idea that science and math were literally the linchpin that could hold a civilization together, to see so many people scoff at science and turn to black magic.
Well, I mean, I understand it. Like, I get it, because we're taught in our society to worship the patriarchy, and because we're worshiping this patriarchy, it holds somebody accountable, so to speak, so that when something goes wrong, we know where the issue is so that we can fix it. The problem is there are too many people still drinking the Kool-Aid while we see the truth, and they don't see where the issues are in a lot of cases. And I get what you're saying. Like, I can't imagine living in today and watching the news and seeing people suffering and not recognizing that we have to do something as a government, as a society, as a people, that we have to become the village. And the problem is there's too many people who bought into this nonsense of the proverbial, the almost the me generation. And it brings us back to this selfishness that I think people don't look past the noses on their faces sometimes. And it's a problem. And honestly, the successes that you saw, the successes that we saw, unfortunately creates that complacency, because we do the work as activists. We do the work so that people can live their lives. And so when they're living their lives, they're doing what they're supposed to do. We're not asking, I don't want everybody to be an activist unless they're drawn to do that, because there's a lot of people who are misguided. What I want is for them to be able to live their lives. And that's why I've done the work. And for us to be able to live our lives, and for my son to be able to live his life and not have to be halted or hindered by the government telling him what he's allowed to say and whether he's allowed to talk about his two moms.
Let me ask you a question. And, it's a matter of great debate. There are voices on the right who say this is a very narrow, not decision yet, but a trial balloon, if you will, this opinion. And it really only pertains to abortion rights. But I think many of us think otherwise. And I want to know where you weigh in on this.
So no, I mean, there is legal precedent that's set by Roe versus Wade that includes the LGBT community, that includes families. There's I was reading on Facebook, Julie Seaver had posted this, and I thought it was so pertinent to this is the argument that we need to remind ourselves about. Roe versus Wade writes have become responsible for court decisions supporting adult rights to sexual intimacy, to gay marriage, and to the rights of parents to make family decisions, such as whether their children are home schooled or go to religious schools. The HIPAA right to privacy also supports an adult's right to decide their medical care and an adult's right to die by rejecting medical care in certain circumstances. This medical care area also implicates the rights of autonomy of the physically disabled, mentally ill, and further, the right to privacy can support artificial insemination and transgender individuals. They've been used to argue that schools can ban people from bathrooms, gender identity, like the list goes on, and Roe versus Wade was the linchpin to a lot of the precedent that moved forward from there. And so when you talk about the right to privacy and how far that's going to go, we are all subject to being taken advantage of in this respect. We're not talking about women. We're not talking about the LGBT community. We're not talking about families who are couples who are trying to become parents. We are talking about everyone. There is nobody who is protected if we lose the right to our own autonomy and to our own privacy, and to take care of ourselves.
It shows the incredible, mind-blowing hypocrisy of this political philosophy, we'll call it that used to tout individual rights, limited government, to see them twist their particular biases to where they're demanding the exact opposite. Mm-hmm. Got a laugh myself, but I stumped a right winger when I said, when did conservatives stop believing in conservation? And they couldn't respond. It was right. They could not make an argument.
Right. Even from a religious standpoint, I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday who's a rabbi, and he made the case clearly. He was able to cite references. He made the case that even in Judaism, my Orthodox family members, even in Judaism, it's literally the religion states that the life of the mother, that the life of the woman takes precedent over an unborn, because that unborn does not become a person until they're officially until they have autonomy. And this law takes away our autonomy. It takes away our personhood. It takes away our ability to be able to take care of ourselves, and for under certain circumstances would literally take away our lives.
We hear comments from the right where we have to breed more white people. I mean, my God.
I haven't heard that one, but I wouldn't be surprised to hear it.
They said that we have to restock. We have to restock, and of course, I don't know how much further you have to go to say, well, then, every woman will be required to bear X number of children for the state. I just hope that we can continue to make a rational discourse, because the thing that troubles me most is if we have another right-wing administration in Washington with a rubber stamp Congress, and honestly, the way they've been tinkering with the state's electoral system, it seems more likely than not that that's what we're going to end up with. I just worry that there won't be room for rational discourse, that they're going to push us into a corner.
I mean, I think that January 6th demonstrated that there really isn't rational discourse necessarily. Like we've come to the point where we need to reclaim it. It's not even at the point of maintaining it. It's at the point where we need to find it again. And I think that we don't have representation on the other side, on the conservative side, that even we were having a discussion, and it used to be the case that there were pro-choice Republicans. There were supportive. There were people who were supportive of autonomy over ourselves. And you know, we were having I was having a discussion with a group of friends the other day, and one of them said, well, you know, there's also the Republicans. And I said, if you can name one Republican who has voted in a way that I can support, then I will 100%, like, I'm on that bandwagon, so to speak. Like, I haven't found one, and I'm tired of, you know, of liberals and progressives pretending that we need to have bipartisan support for things that we don't have bipartisan support for in the first place. I would like to see bipartisan support for all of our issues. We just don't see it, because instead the conservatives, and you know, listen, I've represented organizations that have been supportive of the nonprofit world, and so, you know, I've always had to kind of, you know, ride that line. I'm speaking as myself today. I'm on the board of a few different organizations, but I can tell you, as far as I'm concerned, when I can find a Republican that I can support, then I will go back to finding nonpartisan, you know, bipartisan support for things. In the meantime, I'm not digging under rocks that I'm not going to find anything under. You know, it's sad, because we have a lot of people, because I don't believe that the 10% of Republicans that are actually in office are representative of all those Republicans. I know plenty of people who are pro-choice Republicans, who are supportive of the issues that we think are supportive. They just have the wrong idea, and they think that it's that the Republicans have a better fiscal record, even though they don't. And so it goes into, you know, finding those people who will run for office that aren't just going to carry the flag.
I have relocated to another part of the country from my long time down in Florida, and I have heard some things here in the unreconstructed South that so blow my mind. You remember the old argument, you know, that the reason that so many of the poor working class people support draconian Republican policies is because they believe that one day they'll be rich. And I kid you not,
Mm-hmm.
I had the local garbage man in my house, and he looked at my wife and I wearing masks, and he said, well, you know, after the election, all that stuff will be put away. And I said, really? You think so? And he said, oh, gosh, yes. This is just, you know, a Democratic plan to scare us. He said, but I'll tell you something. I don't believe in virus, and I don't believe in socialism, because when I get to be a millionaire, now, this is the guy who is the local garbage man with one truck. With one truck. And he's standing in my living room telling me that he doesn't want anyone to be controlling his money when he becomes a millionaire. Now, the fact that he was in his probably late 60s made me think that his opportunities to become a millionaire were really slim, let's say. But this man was expressing his honest belief. And this is not a person who is, you know, otherwise mentally challenged, but these are actual beliefs of people walk around. And, you know, when I think about the work that we have done, the corners that we've stood on, the legislators we've cornered and buttonholed and pitched, and the petitions we've signed and the street corners we stood on, and I hear that kind of stuff, and it just it's a real, you know, it's a blast of some kind of air. I won't say what, but wow.
Listen, I think that the issue hindering that trash collector from becoming a bajillionaire is not necessarily his lot in life, but it's his idea, this idea that he doesn't believe in socialism, that he doesn't believe in the virus. Like, those are the things that are going to, like, his his belief system is really hindering the rest of his life. He could be doing better, except that when you look at it from that standpoint, you put people in office that are going to make sure that you pay more taxes and have a lot more issues. Luckily, even though I can tell you that many of my family members voted for Reagan, which I wouldn't have, but I was a child. I can tell you that that we had those discussions, we had discourse, we had conversations about it, which is probably why I'm as consistently, I wouldn't call myself combative, but at least productive when it comes to having conversations with people about it. Like it's probably the reason, and most people don't have those conversations. And most people are not sitting down with their family members and having those, and making sure that they're educated on those issues. And so what you're dealing with is a situation where those people in particular are perpetuating falsities and negative information instead of learning for themselves how they think and what they believe is the truth so that they can move it forward. And that's, I think, the biggest hindrance that we have. Like the thought process, I'm not teaching my son that he has to believe how I do. I'm teaching my son to understand all the things so that he can make a choice and he can make a decision as to where he stands. Now, if he's a conservative, we're going to have a few more discussions because, but I think that, I think it's, and that's fine. Like, I have family members that are conservatives that I adore. And as a matter of fact, one of them just told me the other day, or a couple of weeks ago, we were at a dinner with the family, and he proclaimed himself to be pro-choice, which I was so happy about because because his stance is pretty conservative. And so I was really pleased to hear that. He's a doctor. It's something that, that I really appreciated hearing his stance on that. And so you never know where those good messages are going to kind of permeate the rest of the noise, so that you can, and that's why we have to continue to stand on the street corners and go to and talk to you and, and do all the things that we can to make sure the good messages come out, because when you only hear the negative stuff, then it's hard to do that work. It's hard to think the right way.
Let me ask you a question. I think when I hear my Democratic friends say, it's important to get the vote out, and of course you can never disagree with that. I'm just troubled and worried that our state electoral systems have been so compromised. And I don't see much standing in the way of that dilemma. And I worry what an even more conservative Congress could be up to. I attended an ACLU conference, probably a decade ago now. And at this ACLU conference in Washington, D.C., Antonin Scalia addressed it. And he said that, you know what those kind of meetings are like. They're generally convivial, and lots of good, positive people around, and there's a fellowship among progressive activists and ACLU activists, and there's such a really good feeling. And here, Scalia came to give a speech, and at the end of it, almost as a afternote, he said, if we can get 4 more justices on the conservative side, you just watch out. And this shudder went through the auditorium, because these are people that think about that problem and knew just how awful and scary that implication was. And I'm afraid that's where we are now.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think he was right. And, it's funny because he also came from a time where the conservatives and the and the conservatives and the liberals were able to have, communicate and have, and have that discourse, that positive discourse. And even he saw the writing on the wall, and that's a big deal. It's a big deal for him to say that and for him to even have been at an event like that is a big deal, because you wouldn't see, some of the justices that are fighting against us now, to, you know, show up to something like that. And so the fact that he was even there demonstrates an entirely different attitude. I think that he was right, and I think that our main, my main goal in next is to implore the president to expand the Supreme Court. The only way for us to level out the playing field is to get more players on the field. And so right now we've got 9 people that are representing the bajillions of people in our country, and that's not representation. That's not. It's more diverse than we've seen it in the past, but that doesn't mean that it's representation.
I want to end on a positive note, at least as positive a note as I can. We have theoretically got coming up in June the televised hearings. And of course, all things being equal, it's a real crapshoot. It could be amazing, it could be wonderful, and it could be a dud. For those of us who care about the Constitution, I think it's a pretty big deal. What do you anticipate? Do you think there's a chance that Garland, Merrick Garland, is going to get up off the dime and do something?
That's a good question. I'm not an expert when it comes to the courts. I'm not, you know, so it's, you know, I don't even like to throw my, you know, to throw consideration out there. I think that it's, you know, I think in order for them to make a justifiable argument, they're going to have to do a lot of moving around and maneuvering in order to justify taking away people's rights on so many levels. And I think, you know, at this point, my focus is just going to be done on the next, you know, few weeks, the next, you know, trying to get people out to make the noise that we need, so that hopefully John Roberts sees that we have, you know, so that the Supreme Court in general sees that they have to, they can't politicize this. They can't turn this into what they're trying to do. And furthermore, the justices who said that Roe is precedent and that shouldn't be touched during their confirmation hearings should all be disbarred, as far as I'm concerned. I know that you wanted to leave on a positive note. We have some, you know, some good things coming up. I think we have one of the groups that I'm working with is putting together. Is it okay if I go ahead and plug an event that's coming up?
Please, of course, of course.
I don't want to just, you know, take advantage, but we have Jews and Allies for Abortion Rights, a virtual rally that's coming up on May 17th at noon. And I'm going to put it on my Facebook page, so anybody that wants to get more information is welcome to contact me. MEREDITH.OCKMAN@gmail.com is my email address, and Meredith Ockman is my name on Facebook too. So, and we've got a couple of rallies that are coming up too. We have some people leaving office who have been in for a long time, including Ted Deutsch, for example. And we've got some couple of candidates that are running that I think are going to be really important and really wonderful. I'm so excited that Hava Holzauer has put her name in the ring too. And so, you know, so there's hope. I've got some hope that there's, you know, there's a few candidates that we can, you know, proverbially hang our hats on, and you know, and I'm gonna bolster as much of them as I can. So I'm putting together my list, my slate that I'm gonna want, and you know, we'll see how that goes. But stay tuned on Facebook, and anybody else that I can help with. PBC HRC is of course gonna do our local endorsements as well, and anybody who wants help with, you know, with voting on a, you know, I'm happy to talk it out and help with local races anywhere in the country. I can help with that stuff. I've run campaigns across the country.
Well, the work you're doing with the Human Rights Coalition alone is wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us, Meredith. Thank you for your time. Wonderful to see you again. You take care of yourself.
Thanks, Rick. It's always wonderful to see you.
Okay, bye-bye, dear. Thanks again.